are easy to make. Like, how
You're starting on this right now?
How do you not know how to make a good movie? I don't get it. I just don't understand how that could occur.
You know who my favorite person in that whole discussion was?
Do not say Evan DeGraff.
Fuck no. No, come on. No, Evan got too emotional.
It was the first time in the Facebook group that I felt like I bothered people, and it was the first time that people bothered me outside of, say, Kevin and Mark.
It was just the take, right? It was just they were... Okay, let me give my perspective.
It was a couple things. Go ahead.
So from my perspective, the thing that took me off, or that caught me off guard by it, was that this is like a recurring statement that you've had, or you know what I'm saying? Like, so I was just kind of like, really? Like, why now? And so this all started, to give us some background for people that just aren't in the group that listen to this show. Brando likes to kind of throw some fuel on the fire.
I love it.
Like light the spark a little bit. I do too, and it's funny, but it's also good. It's
Brando
really good.
is one of the few people
he could
in
host
our
After Sight and Sound.
yeah
for sure.
Brando is one of the few people in the Facebook group that we actually know personally.
Right.
So he gets away with that.
Yeah.
I mean, not that we would have a problem if anybody else poked fun at us, but he knows he can, so he does it.
There's a few other people. Shout out to Brandon Turner, who invited me to go to a soccer game with him.
Brandon,
recently.
Ross, and then of course like my bandmates.
Yeah,
for the most part. But.
So he posted this thing. I don't even really know the whole context of it, or I can't remember it. But essentially, it called out the point that you've made, that you've had before about it's not hard to make a good movie. Right. I get that statement right. So, yeah, it kind of made me wonder, like, are there other takes that we say that people have, strong disagree with us?
That we say? No. That I say? Yes.
And I'm sure that there are. I'm sure that there are things that people disagree with, but it was just funny that they had a platform to comment about it, and which is fine. It's totally fine for people to have the point of view, but the reaction was strange because you said it before, and also... I have the luxury of sitting here, knowing your facial expressions when you say things. not necessarily that was like a joke or anything like that, but I've just kind of always understood what you meant by it.
Yeah, there's a few things that I was thinking about. For one, I don't care that Brando said it.
Of course,
I don't care at all.
Yeah.
And I'm also not going to make it seem like I was just joking, guys.
So some people took it too personal in the sense where it's like, why are you even fighting on behalf of
I think it was
this industry?
I think it was like what you just said. I don't know if everybody understood what I meant by it, which is okay. But it's just funny how I have such a strong desire to not be taken seriously to the point where I can just say anything and get away with it. And that was further proof that I do not do a good job of doing that because it apparently happened so much that people decided to speak up on it. But
we're offended.
I don't think people know that. And that's what I told Evan, because I was kind of like, oh, it doesn't have to.
Did you pull him off to the side?
Well, I kind of. What do you call it? Drop the mic on him a little bit.
Oh.
I mean, I didn't. I just wanted him to stop, but I dropped the mic on him because I was like, "Dude, I know how hard it is to make a movie. I couldn't make one.
Yeah,
so it's okay."
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know. My favorite person's take on the whole situation was I don't know his name. Warhorse.
Yeah.
Hand Machine. What's his name?
Ham Machine?
Hand Machine. What's his name?
I don't know if you guys know this because he doesn't use Facebook with his personal account, but the person in our Facebook group, if you're not in the Facebook group, sorry, we're excluding you.
Is his name William Michael Horsey?
All the more reason for you to join the Facebook group so you can get involved in all this stuff. But there is a very popular film podcast that exists called War Machine vs. Warhorse. And he uses Facebook as WM Horsey, but the host and who it is actually, his name is Michael Deniston. And he is...
Big fan of that name. It sounds like a comic book superhero.
Does it?
Kind of.
Deniston?
Michael Deniston. Like it sounds like a made up name that somebody would use.
I feel
as
like
their
it sounds
cover
more
name.
of like a head honcho at the CIA in an action thriller. Like
Exactly.
Deniston,
who also moonlights as a
superhero.
yeah.
Okay. But anyway, Michael Deniston, he hosts War Machine vs. Warhorse, and he actually lives in Lexington, so he lives like right next to us. So I've been on his podcast a couple times, and vice versa. So he's a good guy. We don't share the same opinions hardly on anything at all. So I love that he came into my defense, and I was like, that's the last person I thought who would come to my defense.
But the thing about that is the fact that he knows you personally, and he knows how to take the things that you say. And
never met him in person.
You know what I'm saying? But just in general,
I know.
like you've had enough of a long form conversation with him.
He gets me, and I get him.
Okay, never met him. How you doing? It's fine. But I think the thing that I was taken back by is just this whole concept of defending the filmmaking process by, I mean, I'm just going to say it right here. You know, you've tried to make a movie and this and that.
Yeah.
None of you motherfuckers have tried to make a movie like we're talking about, right? Let's just lay it out.
I made that point. I was like, look, Warner Brothers not being able to make a good movie is a whole lot different than me not being able to make a good movie.
Yeah, so, and
when they make good movies all of the time but continue to fuck up, the one example that I had brought up at the time.
And you will never hear me defend music in that way. I might defend the concept and broad spectrum of music, how it should be, you know, it should be accessible to people. But never like, how dare you not like Death Grips? It should be, no, I fucking get it. Like, I understand that everybody's got their own personal take and viewpoint and this and that. Not that what you had to say had anything to do with that specifically, but it was just weird that people were so defensive about it.
I actually thought it was interesting because, like, yeah, to your point, they're defending that construct, and we talked about it before. Unless it's something that,
and your statement is also like what it is, and correct me if I'm wrong. What you're saying is still a broad statement. Like, you're not getting down into the fine details about what it is specifically you're saying. You're just making a statement that and I sort of,
it shouldn't be this hard.
Yeah, I interpret it as saying like, there are so many variables available for you to make a good movie. It's kind of ridiculous that we get bad movies.
Right.
Yeah. So it was fascinating experience.
Yeah. It was interesting, though, that people were defending the construct, whereas I'm not somebody who is always going to do that. I like to think, and hopefully for the most part, I'm sort of defending personalities more than I am those constructs. So like the studios, it's like, usually when a movie is bad, whether I'm right or wrong, I usually look at the studio first. Like, was it an interference issue? Because I'm going to come to the defense unless there are outliers. Yeah. Michael Bay, I don't trust to make a good movie ever because of him. Not necessarily Platinum Dunes, which is his production company that just produced A Quiet Place.
Right.
So
I didn't realize that was his company.
Yeah, Platinum Dunes. Very, very big production company. And
horror remakes, that's something I learned this week via Movie Talk.
Right. And on the flip side too, something like Marvel Studios. I'm going to probably side with the studio on that. When I see them take, like, at first, at the time, I remember being so bummed out and thinking that Marvel was not giving Edgar Wright a chance. Yeah. But then when I see what they've let James Gunn do and what Ryan Coogler do, now I look back on it and think, I don't think Edgar Wright would have, not that he wouldn't have made a good movie, but maybe he would have strayed way too far outside, because Feige's been fair to a lot of other filmmakers and let them do their thing. So, or I also thinking about, well, maybe if Ant-Man was made today, maybe he would allow Edgar Wright because maybe something flipped in his head. I don't know. So point being, I thought it was interesting that people were defending the construct, because I don't always do that. But and then I was thinking about, do people do that in sports too? Like, I think they do. I think people defend teams, and then when players are outspoken about particular things, that they raise their pitchforks towards the personalities or individuals before they raise the pitchfork. Like, I don't hear a whole lot of outcry when it comes to things that teams or those franchises are doing. You know what I mean?
Well, in sports, I think it's difficult because teams represent like almost like a corporate entity. So so they're a business. Like the team is the business. The individuals that you break down, that's you can kind of focus in on one specific ideology or whatever. But like, how come Colin Kaepernick, got cut from the 49ers? Well, there's a bunch of different reasons that it could be, but somebody could easily see why it was potentially a PR decision because they didn't want a distraction or whatever it was going to be.
I mean, if you want to talk about Kaepernick.
I don't want to talk about Kaepernick. In fact, what I want to talk about, to switch gears completely, have you been paying attention to this Facebook stuff?
Zuckerberg.
Zuck says, as Gary Vee calls him, Zucks is a great guy.
I've seen a ton of memes. I know that he's been placed in an interesting position. I've seen a lot of people bring MySpace Tom back up and say, that's what I saw today. People are saying MySpace Tom actually won when it comes to the social media wars because he's on a beach somewhere. And
no, that's not true. In fact, he completely undersold his company for like a ridiculous.
It was still like $600 million.
Do you know how much Facebook's worth? Do you know how much MySpace could have been worth?
Would you have a problem if you sold MySpace for $600 million and you didn't have to work another day in your life, Jay?
Yeah, for sure. But you do realize that he didn't get all of that money, right?
But like, still,
personally, I know. I'm just saying.
I have a hard time. I'm not saying.
Trust me, he didn't win the social media war.
It's people being funny on the internet.
I'm just saying.
I'm not, taking that to the grave. I'm just saying I have a hard time thinking that he lost out on anything.
Oh no, absolutely.
I was gonna say I would love to be MySpace.
He's looked at from a business perspective as kind of a fool. I mean, by his peers, which is fine. He could be laughing and, like you said, sitting on a beach and this and that.
Well, my point was he's not in the seat that Zuckerberg is in right now.
Absolutely.
So in that sense. But we could talk about MySpace and how that was handled, but that's that's a different conversation.
Well, let's talk about this stuff for a second because I found it fascinating. Obviously, I've talked before. This whole thing that's going on was so heavily touched on and discussed while I was in college because it was such a hot button issue when I graduated from college 8 years ago. And now that this whole thing is like public knowledge and this and that, we've touched on a little bit, but the this hearing or his whatever you want to call it, his Q&A session he's had with the government has been fascinating to say the least. I was trying to wrap my head around it, and I wanted to kind of talk about it here because a lot of people can get their information just via headlines and this and that. Did you see some of his answers to their questions? Like one of the memes that's going around is like Mark Zuckerberg educates our government on how the internet works. Like this one guy was like,
I saw some stupid questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Like this one guy asked him, he was like, so if your platform is completely free, how do you make money? And he was like, well, we make money with ads.
Right.
And the guy was like, oh, okay. Which I think I
could have answered that question.
Right, but I think the guy is a dummy because he was trying to play cool because what he was trying to say was we sell ads against our users and their information, etc. I want to talk about this business and what it could lead to. Because it's important. We're on the internet, obviously. I was outspoken a few weeks ago on our show about how I'm not a huge fan of a lot of government regulation. I'm just not a big fan of it. However, I do believe that certain things do need to be regulated, especially when things are being potentially abused. Right now, with the internet, much like I've talked about with capitalism before, in principle, things are good and they have good intentions, but there are times when people can exploit those things. One of the things that we touched on is that if you are going to be an active participant in the internet, you have to understand and you have to know that the thing that you're giving up is your privacy.
Mm-hmm.
You're giving up your information. That's how a lot of these companies do make money, is by getting your information and selling it. And what Mark Zuckerberg was saying in these interviews was, people, if they don't want it, they can not be on Facebook. Now, what somebody might say would be, well, that's kind of hard because all my friends are, well, that's not their problem.
Right.
They're in the business of creating something that other people want to use.
Well, the other question could be, well, even if I cancel my account, they still have my information.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where things get a little bit fishy. There's things like shadow profiles and this and that. Are you familiar with this? The shadow profile concept and theory?
Go ahead.
So essentially, let's say you never signed up for Facebook, but yet your name might have been brought up on Facebook, or just via your search history, or I'm sorry, not your search history, your web history. If you were to go and look at someone's Facebook profile, even if you watched a Facebook video, even though you weren't on Facebook, Facebook is still taking your information, storing it, and then selling it on. That's where things get a little bit weird and fishy. However, I don't think I think Facebook still reserves the right to offer a free product and sell ads to their customers based on the information that's given to them. In my opinion, so let's use McDonald's as an example. Okay, let's say McDonald's wanted to advertise a new Happy Meal on Facebook. They could themselves take a research team and go on every single person's Facebook profile, get their own information and data, and assemble it and market it to you. Is that do you think that's a pretty reasonable way to do your research? By actually going out and getting the information.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how, polls and this and that come about.
That's how you and I might market Sight and Sound to somebody.
Exactly. Yeah.
If we were trying to focus and centralize our audience in that way, yes.
Exactly. So what Facebook does is they say, well, that's a lot of hard work for you. Why don't we do some of the work for you? We'll charge you a fee and we'll provide you this information. Also sounds like a pretty reasonable transaction.
Right.
But again, where it gets weary or wishy-washy is, well, what information should be shared and what shouldn't be shared? In my opinion, where regulation should come in, I think there should be a middle ground where companies should be able to distribute that information. I think things like being so transparent to where they're just like, here's all the information we're giving up to you. Like, I don't want to have to sign something every single time my information is being distributed. I mean, that's kind of a pain in the ass. Imagine every single time you signed in, you had this whole list of things that you had to read through. And I also don't want to get notifications every time something like that happens. So the middle ground, in my opinion, I think there should be something called the public profile concept. So basic information about you and about me and whoever else should be available to people. My name, where I live, if I choose to share it, if I choose to share where I work, all of those things, the things that I like, the things that I've decided to make public on a public profile that anybody can access, should be the information that Facebook should aggregate and sell to a company. If I've withheld something, Facebook has no business knowing when I leave their website, the next website I go to. No business. They should never ever sell that type of information to somebody else.
This is one of those things where on paper I don't like the idea, the principle of it, I don't like the idea. But then I think about, how does it actually affect me? So my question is, and there are people who are not privy to any of this. Mm-hmm. They just get on Facebook and say shitty things about recipes and the weather. But let me ask you, though, because I don't know. Nothing has ever happened to me negatively that I'm aware of. What does it mean that these companies have my information? Like, I don't think I care. I don't want people to know every single thing I'm doing, the principle of it. But it's like, that doesn't bother me enough to not have Facebook. I don't care. Same with like MoviePass. MoviePass is another company that I utilize. I know that it's so cheap because they're selling my data. But why the fuck do I care if certain companies know that I saw A Quiet Place the other day? I don't know why I care yet.
So,
you know?
So people in theory shouldn't care, but there is this magic that happens where companies will prey on people who are susceptible to being advertised to, or let's say,
well, the politics of it, that we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
Too.
Which
I get that.
But I think it's completely fair. I mean, if somebody wants to advertise their political policies like it's something they're selling, then absolutely. It's on the individual to make their own decisions, right? So then we get into a conversation of, should we be protecting people from not being smart enough to make their own decisions? That's really the decision that we're
the only thing I'm afraid
about.
of, and this doesn't have anything to do with corporations. The only thing I'm afraid of on Facebook right now is just weirdos knowing where I live. You know what I mean?
Oh,
I don't like the idea of people knowing where I live, and that's why I don't I don't have my high school and the year I graduated. I don't have any of that on Facebook. Not that they don't know it, because it was there at one point. Since I've had Facebook, it was on there, and I've removed it.
Right.
So Facebook has it, but I don't think my profile is the easiest thing to come across.
Mm-hmm.
So that idea I don't care for, and I've made those precautions, but I just haven't felt it enough to know why I should be that worried.
So let's paint another picture. I'm a huge fan of just civil liberties. Like, human beings should have the right to choose to do whatever they want as long as it's not hurting somebody else.
Agreed completely.
But that goes against what we're talking about, sort of.
Okay.
Do you remember this whole thing that came up where the government was going to step in? I believe it was the FDA. Step in and regulate the size of drinks that fast food chains could offer people. Why should the government be involved in a decision like that? So what most people would say would be, well, we don't want to give people the option of getting something that's too unhealthy, when an argument could be made of, well, shouldn't the individual be able to decide if they want something or they don't want something?
It's the whole smoking section dilemma as well.
Well, sort of. I mean, you're also building in a place where other people have to exist.
Yeah, but I mean, but those conversations don't come up. I have a right to smoke. People still did that, is what I'm saying. There was still that argument. Like, why can't I have the choice?
But me drinking a giant Coke in my car and me smoking a cigarette in my car with somebody.
I know that.
Okay.
Obviously, I don't want to be in a room with somebody smoking a cigarette.
Gotcha.
I'm just saying.
What about vaping?
Huh?
What about vaping? Are you okay with it?
I got somebody to convert to vape, by the way, who's smoking. That happened this week. I told her not to talk to me about it, but just to go on and do it.
Did you give her my Instagram profile? Here, talk to this guy. He'll answer all your questions about it.
We have a vape shop across the street from where I work, so I just said
Capital Vape. Shout out Capital Vape.
Yeah, she came back from lunch, and I just looked at her. I said, "You're not off lunch yet. Go across the street." And I told her what it was. And I said, "Just walk in there, tell them you want to quit smoking, and to give you the cheapest alternative possible." So she did it. I felt.
Did she like
it? She went from smoking a pack a day to, I think the next day she only had 6 cigarettes a day.
Yeah. So now she's what we would call a dual user, which is fine. That's so people cut down. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, you're absolutely right. The problem is I just haven't been able to. I think you could say this about politics in general. There's just some issues don't affect everybody.
Yeah.
So not everybody is thinking about this all the time.
But yeah, we're expected to fall on one side or the other.
I can't visibly understand the consequence of someone having my information.
Right.
I haven't felt it. I can't see what's going on there, so it's not affecting me.
Right.
And so that's why I have a hard time. But when you put it that way and you talk about civil liberties and you should be able to do what you want, of course I agree with that.
Right.
That's why if the people that are worried about Facebook, I don't have a problem with it.
Right.
It's just not affecting me entirely.
So there are times when things like that affect the industry or affect industries And so much of it does bleed over a little bit into public consciousness and zeitgeist. And music is a great example of that. So back when radio was as dominant as it was, the record industry would basically form what the top 40 look like by just, we're going to inject a lot of this, take away some of the, it's like a recipe, take away some of this, and we can mold the top 40 charts exactly how we want it to look.
Mm-hmm.
And the radio is forced to play that top 40 on constant rotation. Well, if you can construct that enough, and that's what's being pumped into everybody's brains, well, you can make certain artists rise and certain artists fall, certain genres fall. So that's where it gets a little bit weird too. Like, I don't know how comfortable. So when I go on Spotify and I go on the new release section, there's a lot of things on there. There's a lot of things that aren't on there.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, I noticed that.
A lot of things that I
that I look for.
Exactly. It would be nice. I don't know how that works. It would be nice for the company, in my opinion, to be a little bit more transparent about that. Like, are you handpicking these artists? Why are some artists not left off?
There's got to be money involved.
Is there money involved? I think stuff like that should be noted.
Kind of like the Oscars.
Absolutely.
Only certain movies get recognized.
Like the government.
And if you don't play ball, then you don't get recognized.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think transparency across the board, especially with a lot of these internet companies and tech companies, which I celebrate. I think they're making life a lot better and more interesting. But transparency is needed. I mean, you look at somebody like Netflix, nobody has any fucking idea how that company works.
I know.
And I don't know.
Except that they just throw fucking money.
I know. I don't know how comfortable I am with it.
Did Lost in Space come out today? I think it did.
I thought it came out like 2 weeks ago.
No, I think it came out today. I haven't checked it out, obviously. We're not talking about it today. But I do want to.
I don't like living in the past, even though it's a show about the future.
Who thought this Spotify Hulu thing would happen?
I thought it happened a long time ago.
Why?
Because
I had no idea.
I've known about this for a really, really, really long time.
Really, Jay?
So much, I swear, so much so that I thought that it was already a done deal.
Jay.
And it was something that was going on. And then when I saw this thing on my phone, I was like, why are they just now telling me about this?
For those of you who don't know, Spotify and Hulu have this joint program, this joint subscription. If you pay $13.99, which is like a $7 discount than if you had Spotify and Hulu separately, you can just pay $13.99 or $12.99, whatever it is, and you just have both.
Let me ask you this question.
It's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Let me ask you this question. Who needs who more? One, and two, who's carrying who on whose back, in your opinion? I guess they're kind of the same question, but
Jay, I don't know. I mean,
who's benefiting the most from this deal? I think it's Hulu,
but
because Spotify is a household name.
But I thought
and
you'd be able to.
Hulu is the redheaded stepchild to Netflix, even though their color is green.
I had it in my head. I'm not saying I expected this necessarily, but I was thinking about the idea of being able to access either app in one of them.
Right.
And with Spooloo.
That's
what we'll call
the new thing.
That's what we'll call it.
Well, let's make it clear. They didn't join forces.
Oh, it's just a joint payment.
Yeah.
Like
they just were like, hey, let's do this together.
That's what's fascinating to me, because it's one thing if you could go to Hulu.
It's like Sony and Marvel teaming up.
It'd be one thing if you could just open up Hulu on your Xbox and search bands.
Is Spotify even on the Xbox now?
It is.
It is on the Xbox now? For a long time, it wasn't on there.
I think Spotify.
You can only get on Pandora and the shitty Microsoft
I think it's on Xbox now. But anyway, there's one way that someone could imagine it, and that's you go to either app and you're able to access both. That's not what we're talking about here.
Right.
You can just...
That would be too easy.
You can just tell them, I have both services, and they go, okay, let's make it cheaper for you. It's nuts. I never would have thought that would happen. But anyway, I was thinking about it, and to sort of answer your question in a terrible way, I could easily imagine going to Hulu and accessing music before I could open up Spotify and access Hulu's content. I don't know if that answers your question in a weird way, but it's like Spotify would be benefiting by being on Hulu, I guess is what I'm saying. If that was the reality.
Let me tell you where a joint venture like this, without being in straight up bed together, would be beneficial for both parties. Spotify primarily used on a mobile platform, right? Of course, Hulu can be accessed via a mobile platform, but it's primarily utilized on a smart TV or whatever the case may be there. We also know that Spotify just went public. They're getting into the business of different media outlets.
They just bought Louder. Did you see that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they just bought Louder.
Podcasts have been a big thing for them, where they're starting to develop their own unique podcast content, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
They also are working on a lot of video content as well. It's a little bit wonky to watch video content in Spotify, but there's no reason why they couldn't still develop it where you could watch it on Spotify, or they could distribute it exclusively on Hulu as well.
Or there's no reason that they can't advertise Man in the High Castle on Spotify. And I don't have...
And maybe that is part of the deal. I mean,
I have the paid service, so I don't get ads unless they happen to... If I was on my desktop and one happened to pop up with the software open. But I'm not seeing ads on my phone or hearing ads on my phone. So that might be something that happens coming soon.
Can I give...
or just advertising Hulu in general.
Can I give a random update on our discussion about Under Oath and where their album could potentially end up on the Billboard charts?
Yeah.
No final word on that yet. We'll get that early next week, I believe. I think, as of right now. But I got an even bigger confirmation that not only do I think this is a potential or a possibility, this, without a doubt, was a huge goal for them. They're going for it. I know for a fact they are. And that's weird to say because a lot of bands like Under Oath, like, I don't think they really give a shit. Like, if it happens, it's cool. But they are trying to make it a thing. So back in the day when I was doing some tour managing stuff, was back in the day when they used to have to do sound scan for their record sales. So a band would go on the road. They would have to, if they sold CDs at the end of the night in the van, they would have to go through with a fucking paper and like a computer and literally type in all this information, send it off to the record labels so that they could report it to SoundScan so that they could actually calculate how much money they made. They would just fudge numbers like crazy, not like, and do weird things like just taking a box of CDs out and setting them in the venue. It didn't have anything to do with money being transacted. It's how many records were or were not in the box.
Right.
So they could literally just take them out, sit them to the side, or hand them out, and it would still notate that. Under Oath, we talked last week about how they were doing all these bundles, and they even packaged every single time you bought an album, no matter if it was the $70 package, the $160 package, or the $20 vinyl that I bought, you still got their documentary with it. Great marketing strategy. Now, I just found out that if you buy a ticket to any of their shows on their new tour, you just get the album for free.
Really?
Yeah. So they're packaging that with it. It's a great
like it's going to be a handout?
I mean, I don't know if
I
don't think you're getting a physical copy. I think you're getting a download for the album itself.
Okay. But so you bought your tickets for the licensed show. Did you get a download?
I've got like 5. I mean, we have our promo copy that we got.
Right.
I bought it on vinyl.
Uh-huh.
The vinyl came with a digital download code.
Yeah.
And I bought 2 tickets to the show. So then I have 2 there. I have 5 Under Oath albums.
Have we announced that, or can we announce it, or is it too early?
What's that?
What we're going to be doing next month.
What are we doing next month? Going to an Under Oath show?
We're going to the Under Oath show, but there's something specific about it. I didn't know we were allowed to talk about it.
There's nothing to report yet. We're attempting to get an interview. We connected. Yeah. I announced that on the music show, and I guess I did it on the Facebook page, but we sort of were talking to Under Oath's PR company. Their name is actually escaping me right now, and I apologize, but they were gracious enough to grant us early access to their album. They also approved us to do an early review of the album. They also put us on a list to do early reviews. Right now, I have the new Melvin's album sitting in our inbox that I need to finish listening to.
We get press screenings, quote unquote.
Yeah. The new Loom album, which we're going to be talking about a little bit later.
It's a great album.
The huge one that we got today, I don't know if you saw it, We got A Perfect Circle's new album sitting in our inbox right now.
Oh,
and I don't know. I mean, I started listening to it today. I didn't get the music stuff is strange because every one we've gotten, I've had to ask them, is there an embargo? One of only like the company that's doing the Under Oath stuff, they're like, no, just do whatever you want.
What's an embargo? Sorry, I'm in the film industry.
the one with the smallest band, they were like, well, don't release your review until the day it comes out. I was like, okay, well,
yeah, that's dumb.
Which it'll come out at like literally at midnight. But
right.
Anyways, so we connected with their PR company, and the reason why we originally connected with them is because I requested an interview with a band because they're coming to Lexington, and we haven't got confirmation if we're doing that or not yet. But we did. I've bought tickets to the show for myself and Kayla, and if for some reason that those tickets won't be necessary, then we'll give them away or something. But that's not confirmed yet.
Did I tell you I bought an Infinity War ticket?
So did I,
and I'm by myself.
That's awesome.
Is it?
You're by yourself to see the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great.
I mean, I obviously wasn't going to miss out on opening night, but I knew I couldn't even fucking talk you into going when I wanted to go.
I mean, I'm going Friday night.
What time?
11:30 p.m.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't going to do that.
IMAX. I got an IMAX ticket.
Oh, you're going Friday? I'm going Thursday.
I got an IMAX ticket for the exact seat that I wanted to sit in.
Yeah, I'm going Thursday, so we'll have to record afterthoughts afterwards.
I'm so... What? Okay, side note, like, doesn't have anything to do with Sight and Sound Weekly. There's no reason why we have to do that show on Thursdays every single week now.
No, you're right.
We could do it on a Monday if we needed to. We just wouldn't have a lot to talk about. The earlier we do it, the less we have to talk about.
Anyway, the point is, I always feel so lame. It doesn't bother me going to the movies by myself, but it makes me feel lame when it's this. You know what I mean? That I have to go by myself. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to give a fuck when I'm watching the movie. I'm going to love it. I just meant there's that lonely moment when you buy the ticket for yourself.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I've got a good seat. It's going to be great. But it was just that moment, that process of buying the ticket. One, please, in this packed theater where everybody's going to be going. I don't know. It's going to be fine. But
yeah.
But yeah, I'm stoked. I still got 2 weeks.
There's a lot of stuff going on. Like,
I need to buy my Under Oath tickets.
Under Oath, Infinity War. I'm going to see Basement and Citizen.
On my way.
It's the same week as the Under Oath show.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Where's it at?
Newport, Kentucky.
Okay.
Very excited.
Say hi to Goodman for me.
Does he live there?
He lives in Cincinnati. He's in Newport all the time.
Oh yeah, Goodman. Sorry, I always get him confused with Sturgill. Don't want the baby.
God damn it.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff going on. Went to a concert this week, Wednesday. Miss Phoebe Bridgers, who I listened to like the first little bit of the Legion podcast when he went to a Phoebe Bridgers concert. If anybody knows who that is.
I was trying to plug your shit, man. If anybody knows who this is, Jay will probably do something for her on your music episode.
I don't know if I will in that. I'll probably talk about it, but yeah, I'll probably talk about it there because I actually already told you the story about how awkward it was just meeting that person in general.
Yeah.
Lovely lady.
I'm glad you had a good time though.
She's from LA. Did you know that?
Or come out to LA. Did we ever cover that Don Broco album? Did you review it?
Yeah.
I did, for some reason that escaped me. I've been listening to it a lot more lately. I enjoy it. It's growing on me.
Would it surprise you if I told you that the same guy that produced that album, Lower Than Atlantis, and Bring Me the Horizon, not produced, but mixed and produced, is the same person?
The Bring Me the Horizon is what strikes me, but it doesn't faze me that it was also Lower Than Atlantis.
That guy, Dan, I forget his last name.
Trachtenberg.
He's done all of their projects. He's like really good friends with Don Broco. Like I think he helped write a bunch of their songs too.
I think he's a good producer then.
I think he's a fucking great producer. Amazing.
I mean, that Lower Than Atlantis album, Bring Me the Horizon. We talk about every week.
He just mixed the Bring Me the Horizon album.
Okay.
Jordan Fish. He produced it. Yeah.
Jordan Fish.
The more I learn about that guy and how much he has his fingers all. This is a guy who came into the band well into their existence, changed what the band was, and after paying attention to that whole mixing session thing that I was involved with, or not involved with, but purchased and was checking out.
You purchased from this company, and they send you each individual track that makes up a Bring Me the Horizon song. So you were listening to how the mix and the recording was broken down.
But they do a live mix along. So like the guy comes in and does the song.
They'll show you how he put it all together.
8 hours.
Yeah,
it took him to do it. And just to hear him talk about it, this new member they have in the band is essentially, I mean, he's the guy. He makes not every decision, most decisions. Yeah. And how much fucking detail they put into their music. Like, talk about something that separates a band like that and a band like Under Oath. I'll just say it right now. Very interesting things. Like they use, even though they have electronic elements, real live strings.
Yeah.
Sections. Yeah.
You know what I've been doing a lot of this week?
Listening to music.
2 things. Fortnite and watching late 90s WWF.
Yeah.
I got the WWE Network.
You know what's fascinating about this whole thing and seeing this from my perspective?
What's that?
I had this whole take on last week's show. Was it last week we talked about? Yeah.
Yeah.
I had this whole take on last week's show about how I think a lot of this new rise of fandom specifically has to do with nostalgia. That I think there are people out there that have no desire to watch wrestling on TV today, but just want to go back and watch older stuff.
Jay, and people are going to be screaming at you, and it's not like I'm not watching.
Scream at me all you want. I don't care.
WWE Raw, it's still one of the highest rated cable. WWE has always been one of the highest rated cable things in existence.
Of course, but it's never leaked over into my zeitgeist.
I was gonna say
without my decision.
It's never affected me in the way that it has. Like, I knew a lot of wrestling fans in high school. Since high school, I haven't been involved in any kind of conversation. Right. I've been to a wrestling match. I went to a wrestling match in high school. One of their road trips, not a taping. But
like for instance, going into the site, if you're a part of the Sight and Sound Facebook group, there are people there who are either on the side of the more visual stuff with TV and movies or on the side of music stuff who are getting exposed. And like Brando, for instance, Brando did not choose to be inundated with all these deep bubble movie takes and opinions.
Right.
But he is now. That's how I am, but with wrestling, and I didn't join a group. I'm just on Twitter.
Yeah. I mean, when WrestleMania happened, I was kind of like,
I couldn't get
where's this coming from?
I couldn't get on Twitter.
Like, I was on Twitter Sunday night during WrestleMania, and I just...
You caught the bug.
My feed, I did catch the bug, but what I'm saying is, and this happens. Did
you take some turmeric for that?
I take that consistently.
Okay.
Ever so often, something happens on Twitter, and I'm just reading through my feed, and I say to myself, when the fuck did you become a fan of this? This was a classic example of that, because I have never, it's Twitter. Before this past Sunday, when WrestleMania happened, I've never seen anybody talk about WrestleMania. Until this year, I've had Twitter for 9 years. So anyway, that was a whole other conversation. But anyway, I caught the bug because we were talking about it. I saw a ton of people. I went back to the WWE or WWF that I know. And I remember I grew up watching Stone Cold in his prime, The Rock in his prime. I think Stone Cold Steve Austin is one of the greatest fictional characters I've ever seen in my life. That guy meant a lot to me. I watched Raw. So I would stay at my dad's house on the weekends. So it'd be like a Saturday night, and he taped Raw on Monday, and he waited to watch it with me. We watched it together. I was staying up late when I shouldn't be, and I was watching trash TV that I shouldn't be. And
whoa.
I know that's what my mom would think, if you will. So that meant everything to me, getting to watch wrestling at that time in what I believe is my prime, based on the knowledge that I have. But anyway, so I found what I thought might be when I started watching it. So I just started in 1997. I just went to January 1997. I'm only watching Raw and the pay-per-views every time those
Attitude
come up.
Era.
Yeah. And so basically where I'm at is Bret Hart is in conflict with the WWE. Him and Stone Cold are going at it. I am watching The Rock, who at the time was Rocky Maivia, and he was the Intercontinental Champion. This was basically his rookie year.
Long reigning Intercontinental Champion, too.
This was like his rookie year, so he was kind of an unknown. So what I saw, I got to see him wrestle with his dad. I didn't remember that. I have zero recollection of knowing The Rock before he was The Rock. So for the very first time ever, I'm seeing Rocky Maivia wrestle as the Intercontinental Champion. So I got to see Rocky Johnson come into the ring when they were fighting. Who was it? I don't know if it was Psycho Sid. It might have been Mankind. But anyway.
Can I hit a quick timeout for a second?
Love it.
Have you ever seen the compilation on YouTube of The Rock selling Stone Cold Stunners?
The Rock selling? Oh, yeah. Where he's just flopping around like a fish? Yeah.
It's the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. So anyway, that's where I'm at right now. So
in fact, on our break, I might have to put it on because it just puts me in a good mood.
So the one thing I did not come across, I didn't realize that I would find something new that I wasn't familiar with. So seeing Rocky Maivia take place, and of course there's the WrestleMania where Bret Hart busts Stone Cold's head open, and blood is literally pouring down his face.
And he refuses to tap out.
I've seen, and he actually passes out. Ken Shamrock is the guest referee. I had seen that before, but it wasn't because I watched it live. It was
UFC's Ken Shamrock.
Right. I've seen that match because my dad. Do you remember Suncoast Video Store in the mall? It was right beside the arcade at the Fayette Mall.
No.
So we used to go there, and he would pick
Video
up,
Solution.
He would pick up VHS or some of this stuff. So I saw those matches out of context, if you will. But
same. That's actually how I got into MMA. I used to be obsessed with wrestling tapes. I was so obsessed that I literally ran out of them. So I was like, I'm going to check out UFC. Real quick, let me ask you this question. Watching this, is this something... What's the best way for you to enjoy this? Are you literally sitting down, focused, watching it, or is it nice to have on in the background while you're doing other things?
So what I'm doing, and not everybody's going to agree with this, but this is what
That's fine.
This is what I want.
They don't have a
for one.
WWE
Network as an app is phenomenal.
I'm sure it is. It sounds like a great idea.
It's got every single thing imaginable.
I have a recommendation for you at the end of this.
It's super overwhelming, actually, because I'm looking for one specific thing, and it was the first time I had the app. I didn't know exactly how to do it, so it took me a second to sort of learn my way around. But I eventually just found that I could look by the year and just select Raw. Like Raw is just a title,
right?
You go year by year. So what I'm doing is I just started that, and you can see it by chapters. So like when you're on Netflix and you're fast forwarding, rewinding, you could that timeline. It tells you the match, so it'll say Rocky Maivia versus Mankind,
like timestamp,
and then it'll give you a timestamp for the final moment of that fight.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
So you can just jump to, like, if I didn't want to watch the whole fight, but I wanted to see the end of something like a Psycho Sid versus whatever, I could go do that. I'm only watching Superstars.
Let me tell you what one of my favorite things was at that.
I'm not done answering your question.
I know. Hang on. In that time period, just because I'm reflecting now, I remember there would be some nights, especially after pay-per-views. I remember, and like they would go to Raw, they would come on air, and then they would show a Hell in the Cell hanging above the ring, and they were like, "We don't know why this is here. There's no Hell in the Cell match on the books." And then it would be like at the end of the show, like people doing an interview in the ring, and all of a sudden, like it just comes down on them, and then like on Raw, they have a Hell in the Cell.
Right.
Like, holy shit. Because Hell in the Cell, I mean, it honestly, other than maybe like a ladder match or a TLC match, it doesn't really get more crazy than the Inferno match.
So yeah, I'm mainly watching like Stone Cold and Rocky Maivia for the most part. I've seen a lot of that's the other thing too. I've always remembered Triple H. I forgot the Hunter Hearst Helmsley before he was that. So I saw the first time Chyna came in when she was like this mystery woman. I hadn't seen that. So I think I was probably more inundated with the 1998.
Right.
Which is cool. But
DX formed yet?
No. Shawn, the Hart Foundation still running, and that's another thing too, because I don't remember the Hart Foundation so much, but I remember. I was gonna say I remember Owen Hart passing, and that happens, I believe, in 1999.
I watched that pay-per-view,
so I still have
crazy.
I still have a couple of years before I get to that moment, but the biggest thing for me again was Stone Cold, and the reason, and I'm still enamored by him, because watching him then and now, I've realized he is the only person so far I buy it.
Yeah.
He is the most real thing.
He's also one of the most consistent people. Like, you talk about somebody like The Rock, whose persona changed. Even The Undertaker. There was a period where The Undertaker came out on a motorcycle to Limp Bizkit's
He was American
Rolling.
Badass, as opposed to a guy who spoke like a demon.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Right.
Come on, bro.
He sells it to me the most. Like, I think he's genuinely pissed at the other wrestlers, but when I see like Bret Hart pull the same act, I can tell that it's a wrestler.
Bret Hart's been pretty consistent too. He's gone from like face to heel.
I'm not even talking about that necessarily.
Right.
I'm talking about the separation of reality.
Yeah,
for me.
And before somebody jumps down my throat, I know that Stone Cold Steve Austin had a persona back when he had hair. And
I was gonna say he had a blonde hair, and
right.
It wasn't even Steve Austin. It was because that's obviously not his actual name. But my point is, he is the person that is selling it to me the most. Like, when he's pissed at somebody, I genuinely believe he's pissed. When I see him hate someone, I genuinely think it's hatred.
Yeah.
He sells the quote unquote fakeness of it all. I only buy it when I see him. And I'm sure that I'm going to, when I see The Rock form, I'm going to appreciate all that over again. But he is he's just sort of larger than wrestling to me. Like I said, I mean, I hold him in the echelon. It's just one of my favorite characters, and I have so many fond memories of doing that. So going back and getting to appreciate it in a completely different way, I mean, I'm just having the time of my life.
Let me throw a couple recommendations for you. Okay. So this wasn't that long ago. It was probably 2 or 3 years ago, maybe. Back when John Ransell, my old roommate, was living with me. One night, we just randomly watched on Netflix. We went on a deep dive of WWE documentaries.
Mm-hmm.
The Mick Foley documentary, amazing.
I think I've seen it.
Incredible. There's also another one. It's Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels, like their rivalry they had over the years. Not the Montreal Screwjob, obviously, to talk about it, but there's a whole other documentary just about that. This is on their long-running feud and it kind of traces both of their history, both of them coming up and sort of colliding. I mean, I don't remember what WrestleMania it was, but the title famously changed hands via an Iron Man match between those two. That was like, it was a crazy, crazy match. And then obviously went on to change hands again in Montreal Screwjob. But all this stuff is fascinating to me.
It's also funny because right now, Vince McMahon, again, this is something I don't remember. Vince McMahon is just kind of like a side announcer guy.
Yeah.
Like right now.
Yeah. Even that might have been like before my time, of watching the show. Because I remember coming into it when he wasn't an announcer.
Like, from what I've seen, and to be totally fair, I'm skipping around, but I can still know exactly what's happening in the episode I'm watching because of the timestamps. But they haven't gotten to the point where they open the show with just like 15 minutes of talking, you know what I mean? Like, when Raw starts, I'm at the point where it just starts with a match.
Right.
Whereas a lot of times Stone Cold would just open the show and he's ranting about something. I haven't gotten to that yet. Right. Vince is just at the table with JR and in those guys, and like Jerry Lawler, right? And he's just kind of a third announcer role. He's been in the ring just like a couple of times interviewing somebody, but he's not the Vince McMahon that I remember.
Villainous, yeah.
Exactly. And that's one of my favorite things is that just Vince and Stone Cold, that's what I remember the most is the beer truck and the milk truck and the cage match where they're bleeding all over each other. And
let's talk about some other TV stuff real quick. Let's talk about something that for whatever reason I watched before you, this David Letterman with Jay-Z thing.
Mm-hmm.
Very intrigued by this episode for obvious reasons because it had to do with music, but also somebody that doesn't do a lot of interviews like this, Jay-Z, and you haven't watched it. I have watched it. So one thing that was nice about this is for anybody that hasn't watched, what's this show called? Is it just called David Letterman?
My Next Guest needs no introduction.
There you go. So if you haven't watched that show, it's not just him talking to a guest for that period of time. He'll break off into these other segments.
Mm-hmm.
His sort of B storyline was with Rick Rubin, one of the most famous producers of all time. Shangri-La Studios, got a tour of a studio and this and that. It was a fascinating episode because you realize, so you've got David Letterman, who is however old he is. How old is David Letterman?
Probably like early 70s maybe.
And then Jay-Z, who is like approaching 50, like he's in his mid to late 40s, and both long careers on either side of what they're doing, but couldn't come from two different backgrounds if they tried. It was an awkwardly combative episode in a way that just saw, first of all, the conversations that they were having needed to be had, and the directions that they started going off in, they needed to go off in those because, for instance, I'll just throw one out there.
You're gonna spoil it.
One of the questions was, it was kind of hard to watch, a little bit like awkward, like kind of cringy at some points.
Really?
Like not in a negative way. So David Letterman says, like, tell me about the N-word. Like, what's that about? And and Jay-Z did a fantastic job at sort of discussing that word. And they talked about how there are black people out there who are offended by people using the word. And there's a lot of black people out there that have taken ownership of it because of what it represented back then and what they've overcome, being able to sort of take that word back. And at one point, David Letterman says, well, Jay-Z says a lot of older people are offended, black people are offended by that word because, it was a word that they heard before some of their ancestors, the last thing they heard before they lost their lives.
Right.
And David Letterman said, well, just to be clear, like, I'm not offended by it. That was his phrasing. And Jay-Z said, well, you definitely should be. As a white person, you should be offended by that word.
Right.
But it's not about you. It's about our people. And it was just interesting to see that interaction.
Yeah.
And how it was handled.
Letterman has always been. Is this the only episode you've seen of this?
No, I watched the Obama episode.
I was going to say, Letterman is not shy about. He constantly tells his audience, he always has.
I didn't get to finish the episode. I only had like probably 15 minutes left.
Right.
I don't know if they got into his, his infidelity.
Yeah, I don't know.
With Beyonce.
Did you see the part where they talked about his mom coming out?
Yes, I did. Also, he asked him about Kanye and their relationship, which was a fascinating.
Was he making jokes about Kanye?
No, not at all.
Oh, really?
No, I mean, he wanted his take, and he basically said Kanye's my little brother, and like anybody in family, sometimes you don't always get along with your brother, or you fight with them, but they're still your brother, and they're never going to not be your brother. Saying things like he's one of the most brilliant people he's ever met. Just like having David Letterman said, do you think he'd sit down here and talk with me? He said, it's not a question of would he, because he would. It's would you be able to get him off the stage? Because he would just talk forever.
Letterman, he's always told his audience that he's dumb. So what I love about him is that he's asking from a place, I'm ignorant. Tell me about this because I need to know. And he's always also doing it for the benefit of his audience as well. So to me, like if someone didn't know Letterman at all, and they heard Letterman say, and maybe you were just kind of throwing it out there, maybe you didn't portray exactly how it was said, but if someone saw Letterman just be like, "What's up with the N-word?" They'd be like, "What's up with this guy?"
Well, yeah, it wasn't really portrayed specifically like that. It wasn't doing it justice. I mean, he was legitimately like he wanted his opinion on it. What was a legitimate fish out of water experience was him going to Shangri-La Studios with Rick Rubin. First of all, if you don't know what Rick Rubin looks like, if you know what David Letterman looks like right now with that beard,
he's a skinny Santa Claus.
That's what Rick Rubin also looks like. It looks like they were just standing in a mirror. One of them was more heavyset than the other. It looked like their beards were just going to like come together and
weave together.
It looked like they were going to shake hands.
Yeah.
He was so much of a fit. Like he was like, "So what are you guys doing here again? Like, what does that thing do?" And like they had a band in their recording, and the band just like performed, and like the woman was just like sitting there in front of him with a microphone singing the song, and he was like, "I didn't expect you to just perform the song like that. Like I didn't know that's what." It was just interesting, fascinating that he was such a fish out of water in that regard. But it was a good episode.
He loves music.
I've had a long, an interesting sort of take on Jay-Z. I haven't agreed with a lot of the things that he's done, specifically in his business practices, but doesn't mean that I don't respect him any less. And definitely a brilliant individual and one of the most successful people ever in music. I mean, I don't know how many musicians can say they've had this long, very long and illustrious career at the top and then became president of the record label that signed them. Like that's fascinating and it's crazy. What was the other show we were going to talk about? Oh, let's talk about Atlanta.
Okay.
We just watched an episode of Atlanta together. I get the episodes a day late than they come out. And because of this and that and recording now afterthoughts, I'm not even really aware of what the episode's about, like the night that it comes on. When on Pitchfork today, and it was like Atlanta's latest episode goes to Drake's party. And I'm like, what? What
did you think Drake was going to be in the episode based on that? Or did the article say that he wasn't in it?
When Atlanta's associated with anything, they could have had Drake in the episode and it could have been a white woman.
I was going to say, it could have been Zach Galifianakis.
Yeah, it could have been portrayed in like this really interesting way. And just getting Donald Glover's just crazy take on Drake, who he is friends with. I mean, well, to a certain extent, I think they might have had a beef at one point, but
to talk about the episode though, it was an episode without Donald Glover entirely.
Yeah,
it was just
he was in on like an Instagram video,
right? Yeah. It was just a Zazie Beetz show this time around. Which again, that's also something that Atlanta's been known to do. But man, I had a really, really good time with the Was there any reason you wanted to watch it together, or you just wanted to watch it and we figured we could do it real quick?
I hadn't seen it. Well, this is a great question because I hadn't watched it yet and I wanted to watch it, and the fact that it had to do with Drake. I mean, so many things I'm on board with at that point. I also realized that, and I watched the show with Kayla for sure, but this show is meant to be watched with a group of people.
I think so too.
It's definitely should be enjoyed. I don't think you have to, but it should be enjoyed that way.
I feel like the show is made up of just scenes that could be individually made into weird YouTube videos. Like there's a weird YouTube, if you will, that people just get obsessive about and they show their friends and like that whole the pool scene, the bathroom scene, it
reminded me a lot of the club episode from last season.
It did, and there was also a joke. Like the humor is unconventional.
Oh,
and this was, and maybe there's another example in the first season, but this was the first time I recognized an actual joke that was put into the show. Okay. And it's when they do an entire bit and they sit on that girl trying to get into the house, and there's that quick cut to her being shoved out of the way by the bouncer. And I was like, that's the first time I think I've seen this show make a joke.
Well, Donald Glover's versatile in that way,
in
right?
the traditional sense. I just kind of thought that humor, that one moment was so striking because to me it was just kind of like set up punchline. And that's, I mean, any other time we're just laughing at some ridiculous shit Darius is saying or how weird said person is being, but it's not set up in that way. I thought that was cool.
So one of the best things about Donald Glover is that he doesn't litter his show with one particular style of joke, right? I mean, actually doesn't even really litter it with one particular tone other than it being somewhat bizarre from time to time. I mean, the episode previous to this that you haven't seen is essentially his take on a horror film, in my opinion, sort of. And I mean, the fact that he can just hit you with those jabs, those little daggers like that, and just sprinkle them in here and there, they almost have a bigger pop, I think. And it's just fascinating. And it's why it's one of the best shows on television. Like,
absolutely.
It's still, even though it was my favorite show for the first season when it came out 2 years ago, it still is baffling to me to think about that I can hold a comedy in this high regard. That's why I'm telling people, like, you have to watch this show.
Mm-hmm.
It's that good. It can stand above a lot of other high concept shows. Another, just to throw out some of my favorite bits, and none of these are really spoilers, I guess, but just a shot of a painting of Drake with an owl perched on his arm is just like the most absurd thing ever.
Yeah.
And the inclusion of a super random character from a previous episode just casually approaching an other set of characters, like the pizza guy. I mean, just him coming up to them in and of itself is just such a smart thing to do.
What's her name stumbling across the older Latino gentleman?
Yeah.
Having him not being able to work a TV. It's hilarious. It was funny because I don't know if you even noticed.
He was like in a cage.
He was in a batting cage, for one.
What?
He was in a batting cage. And two, we spend the entire episode, we're in this mansion. There's a massive pool. There's way too many rooms. He is watching a tube television.
I mean, I just figured he was like a groundskeeper or something like that.
That's racist.
But like at one point or another, the payoff to that joke doesn't come at its highest point until the credits roll.
I know, right?
It's just such a smart show, man. I fucking love it. I love every single thing about it. And I hope to God that they don't take another year off. I just need this as much as possible. This is a show that I will probably annoy people with because it's just something that you can just throw on and enjoy it. It's not so kooky that you just have to pay attention to every single second of it.
I think I want to take a break here in a second, but yes. I do want to get a quick reaction. How great was Legion this week? If you're not watching Legion, there's two reasons to watch Legion. For one, it's just out of this world good and unique, but we're also covering it on Let's Talk Legion every week. Me and RB3, Robert Butler III from Collider, did the episode with me. Jay was out at PB Bridgers, but Legion, it's just out of this world good.
I think part of me is kind of relieved that we aren't doing Let's Talk Legion as like this branded TV time thing now, because I felt like last season some people could have viewed some of my praise of it as being a little bit like, oh, he's just saying this because he's doing the show. And now, like, you know, not that that was the case prior to this, but I feel like my praise it seems more genuine. This second episode was just like reaffirming again just how good the show was, which is strange because even though we are getting it annually, it didn't take a year off like some other shows have in the past, like Atlanta did. It just, the heat meter fell on it a little bit. Specifically, I don't know what it was.
I mean, to me, it felt like just nobody was talking about it.
Yeah.
Not that we weren't ready for it. I mean, I was looking forward to the premiere date announcement back in January.
Even some people in our group, like, you know, were kind of behind or just hadn't paid attention. My God, does it hit you over the head with a fucking lead pipe? And it's just like this show, it just continuously defies whatever you think television could be. I love that it defies what a superhero show could be. And now more than ever, this season, it fucking feels like a superhero show to me. Like
it does.
It feels sci-fi. It doesn't feel too. Last season was like a little art house. I think it could be like, this just seems like a Noah Hawley show.
Right.
Now that we're dealing with more interesting sci-fi elements, it's fascinating.
I told RB3 this on the show because he was just bringing up other superhero shows. And I said last season, it felt like to me, I looked at what DC was doing. I looked at Marvel, Netflix, and then I saw Legion over here. And last year, it was a lot easier for me to just accept all of them for what they are because they are so different in that way. And then I told him, I was like, look, as time has gone on, and I've seen that none of this compares to Legion. And what Legion is able to do to keep me
playing
excited,
a different sport.
It is, but what Legion is doing week to week, it's making me less and less interested. Like, I don't share that same viewpoint anymore. It's like
it's making you less interested in those shows.
Yeah.
Like
I thought last year, like this, it's great that these shows are what they are, these universes are what they are, and they're so wildly different. But it's like now, while I'm watching Legion and becoming less involved with, I did not like Black Lightning. I just didn't. I don't like it. I know a lot of people do. It's not my thing. Jessica Jones was just kind of whatever. I'm not excited about Luke Cage coming back.
Punisher.
Now I love Punisher.
Yeah.
But now I'm just finding everything else unacceptable because it's not Legion. That's sort of where I'm at right now.
Let me drop a take. So the state of comic book stuff, TV and movies as it exists right now we think about it like we do. Some people could argue like I've heard the argument thrown out that we've lowered our standards for this film. I don't necessarily agree with that specifically, but we're all coming from these movies with a reference point of Christopher Nolan's Batman, right? How great that was. We feel like it's unattainable, right? We feel like we want our superhero movies, our comic book properties to be as good as that. It set a really high benchmark, I think, movies like The Dark Knight. And we've kind of all come to the terms now like, oh, that's a once, we can't expect that every time. Now we have on the other side Legion. And I don't mean that Legion and Nolan's Batman are specifically connected because that's what they're like. But Legion shows other comic book properties that exist today in the modern era of pop culture that you can do more. You can strive for more, be more experimental, be more artistic, or whatever the case may be. It's just these opposite ends of the spectrum. And it works. It's working. Yeah. I don't necessarily know if it's working for like casual crossover audiences and this and that. Like, I don't know if the casual casual MCU moviegoer who just goes, tunes out, doesn't take in the same content that you and I do and our listeners do, I don't know if they're going to be as receptive to it. It's going to be as digestible, but it's really impressive. There are so many people in the movie space that I know that don't pay as close attention to TV stuff. They need to watch this show. This looks like a Kubrick film. This looks like, it looks like fucking Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind sometime. It's such a great show.
I agree. Let's take a break, and then when we get back, we'll get into some of our main topics before the weekend hits the stage.
Weren't some of those main topics?
Not the main topics, Jay.
What main topics do we have left?
We'll see you after the break.
All right. We'll be right back. One of the things that we are super proud of here at Sight and Sound is the Sight and Sound Facebook group. It was started by our very own listeners. The Facebook group is the place to be to not only interact with our fantastic community, you can debate with people, stay up to date with pop culture news. You can also interact with Ryan and myself. We're in there all the time. Check out the link in the description box of this podcast and join the group today. I just need to make note here that it's 1:45, which means we have about an little under an hour.
He wants to watch Coachella.
We have 40 minutes before the weekend takes the stage. Abel, as I like to call him.
He's gonna be late.
Abel Tesfaye.
I feel like he's that kind of guy.
You showed up to my house with dinner in hand, dinner being a bag of peanut M&Ms. My question to you is
shareable size, and I've eaten it entirely.
I just want to wish you a happy 60th birthday, because peanut M&Ms, they're delicious. But for dinner?
My dinner was a bologna Lunchable and a pizza Lunchable.
Oh, together. Let's have a party with those Lunchables.
I had both.
I'm now drinking a beer.
It's a fucking Lunchable, and it's a child's meal, so I had to buy 2.
I'm drinking a beer, which means I'll probably fall asleep before this, and
good.
I'll have to make the decision. I'm really tired right now, but I really want to watch The Weeknd, and I'm going to say, it's fine.
I want to get your reaction to the Solo trailer, but first I want to brag, because you went to go see Blockers, and I saw a fucking Quiet Place.
I didn't get to give a take on this on air.
You did not. Yeah. Well, let's talk about it.
Ask me questions.
You wrongfully chose Blockers. I rightfully chose A Quiet Place.
You did.
Had the time of my life. I cannot imagine a world where this isn't in my top 5 of the year.
Okay.
Obviously, that it's an uneducated assumption,
Bold move. Bold statement.
Just the high that I'm on from this movie, it was so good, so magical. What I love about A Quiet Place,
this and Green Room,
so good, both of those. Oh, which one's better?
Yeah, battle together.
I'd have to watch Green Room again.
Yeah, I still haven't seen it.
So strong. But
tough movie to watch.
Green Room was in my top 10
Yelchin.
that year.
Yeah,
so I can comfortably say I love the chant. Don't Breathe, I think, was also that same year.
It's hard not to breathe.
What I love about, I guess you could say this about Don't Breathe too, but what I love about A Quiet Place is that the high concept of the movie is like, let's do what every horror movie does, but to the extreme. Whereas in every horror movie, you're going to see the scene where you have to stay quiet from the killer that's after you or whatever. But it's like, let's make that the entire movie.
Yeah.
It is very much a Cloverfield. It's not. I know it's not, but I'm saying it would fit right in that pocket.
Side note to this conversation, you know what movie's really forgettable?
Cloverfield Paradox.
Well, that for sure. You know what's more forgettable than that movie? Annihilation.
Yeah.
I don't care about that movie.
A Quiet Place kicks the shit out of Annihilation.
Oh, I'm sure it does.
So anyway,
very disappointed by Annihilation.
It took chances, and there might be people that are listening to this that are rolling their eyes, but it did things that I wouldn't expect. Honestly, the biggest turn in the entire movie for me was within 5 minutes. I was so shocked.
Also, spoiler alert. Or not spoiler alert, excuse me.
I was going to say, I'm not going to spoil it.
No spoilers here, because I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I'm not going to spoil anything.
Even though I did spoil the David Letterman and Jay-Z interview for
That's an interview. I was going to say, there's so much more to that. But honestly, yeah, one of the biggest, I loved it. I mean, I was just so involved about 5 minutes in. And and going into it, I was kind of excited too, because I was like, look, this is going to be an entire movie.
You know what's funny
version of the opening of, I remember the beginning of Dawn for the Planet of the Apes being such a big deal at the time, because it's unheard of to spend 15 minutes completely silent without talking. And that's what that was. For a blockbuster, it was so unique in that way. And I was like, wow, they're just going to make that an entire movie. And man, I loved it. It was so well done. So compact. You don't get a lot of compact movies that are straight to the point, succinct. 90 minutes, this movie. And it was just so good.
So to me, it seems like sort of an experience because of how quiet it is. Seems like how I felt about Dunkirk. Just in the way that it's just a thrill ride from the beginning to end. Just a good time, like you're on a wild ride. It's probably nothing like Dunkirk. But anyways.
Nothing like it at all. But it's better.
Cool.
Now everybody's jumping on the Krasinski train, even though I was calling it 2 months ago.
It's not better than Dunkirk or probably the A Quiet Place. Blockers. Hey, everybody out there that's high on Blockers, you need to chill out. The movie is like, if you just said it was fine, I would maybe even have to be like, yeah.
What was your reaction, just for the audience sake? What was your reaction to the 21 Jump Street and the Neighbors, the things that I hold in high regard?
I've never seen 21 Jump Street.
You're fucking kidding me.
No.
Wow.
I thought Neighbors was fine but forgettable, a movie that I wouldn't have no business ever seeing again.
The past, definitely in the 20 teens.
Some of my
top three.
So some of my favorite eras of comedy, I really, really enjoy the Judd Apatow eras of comedy. Your Knocked Up, 40-Year-Old Virgin, Superbad to a certain extent. A bunch of other ones as well that he's been involved with. I like The Big Sick last year, not as much for its comedic value as much as its heart.
Yeah, I don't. You're absolutely right. Big Sick is a comedy, and it was funny, but that's not. I'm more talking about the over the top comedies.
Yeah. I mean, going back even further than that, eras of comedies that I really enjoyed, a lot of the early Adam Sandler films, Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore, Waterboy. I mean, Wedding Singer, just great stuff. The fact of this movie is that all it had, in my opinion, were a few good laughs, a few good chuckles that at the bare minimum were purely baseline, low-hanging fruit, physical types of comedy.
Easy.
That's just...
Well, you mentioned Apatow, Leslie Mann. I mean, she's a force to be reckoned with. Was she the best part of the movie?
No.
Really?
The best part of the movie, for me, is that the kids in that movie completely just laid waste to all the fucking adults in that movie. The kids in the film are... And I'm not even saying they're, like, incredible. They were just... The acting by the adults in this movie was awful.
See, I'm surprised by that, not because I don't think they're capable of doing that, but I didn't realize how... I didn't realize that they were in the movie that much.
Oh, yeah. I would say it's might even be 60-40. 60% adults, 40% kids.
Shocked by that.
Yeah.
Had no idea.
So John Cena, God love him, was terrible in the film. Like, even for a comedy's sake.
Which is weird. I thought he did a good job in Trainwreck.
Leslie Mann in the film, fine. Not her best performance. And then the guy, whoever that guy was.
Barinholtz.
I thought he was doing like some weird Robert Downey Jr. impression through half the movie.
See, I think he's funny too.
I don't think... I just wasn't buying him at all.
Did they at least have chemistry together?
A lot of the problem... Yeah, they were fine. The problem with this film, in my opinion, I think it was badly directed. Like, I legitimately think it was really poorly directed because I should never be able to notice this. I was watching the movie, and from cut to cut, I thought to myself, there is no way in hell this was the best take you could have chosen from.
Interesting.
Not only that, but from cut to cut, I should also never notice this. Really bad continuity errors, like that just completely took me out of it. Like weird body positions of people, and I'm just like, what? Shots that were very, very like stationary of how they were even framed was bothering me. Like the movie to me, the movie had no character to it. And that was really bothersome. Not only that, but the comedy itself wasn't hitting. I was promised by some of the reviews that I saw that this was going to be a fantastic film to see in a packed audience. I sat through 30 minutes of the movie before the first joke even got a chuckle. And that was after a ton of lofted, underhanded throws.
Right.
it just wasn't working, man. It just I did not enjoy it in that regard. The story itself, it actually has some really nice commentary, I think, on parenting
messages
and on adolescence. I also like that the film doesn't shy away from what it's like to be a kid today. A lot of scenes of like a lot of drug use, a ton of drug use. Like I remember as a kid growing up before I was in high school, looking at a movie like American Pie and thinking to myself, like, there's no way, or even like, I don't know, She's All That or 10 Things I Hate About You, whatever, any high school sort of rom-com, something like that. Like, there's no way high school parties are like this. And then you grow up and you're like, high school parties are like that, and they're way worse sometimes, like way worse. And this didn't shy away from that at all.
Right.
And I appreciated that. There were some, I just thought the movie was just so basic. Like, if this is what we're hanging our hats on as like an achievement in cinema comedy, then fuck, man, it's in the tank right now. Like, it was just.
I mean, I would agree with that anyway.
Yeah. It's
honestly.
It's just like very unfortunate. Like, I even said it on social media, I think, that I recently rewatched Thor Ragnarok. I think that is a million times better comedy than this film.
The Blockers.
Yeah. And I'm not even saying that specifically because it's like a MCU movie. Like, I don't give a shit about Thor. But it's a funny movie.
A Quiet Place was beautifully directed.
A better comedy? Oh, sorry. Is there a better comedy than Blockers?
I don't know if I could say that, but
I think I gave it a C. I think I rated it on.
Please watch 21 Jump Street.
Okay, sure. Why not?
I think you'll really like it.
Oh, you know what other comedy I thought was a little bit of a letdown? I thought it was a good movie, but I thought it was a letdown, was The Disaster Artist. I was just kind of my biggest issue with The Disaster Artist is I got it with Tommy Wiseau. Like, I was kind of over him after a while.
To me, my reaction to that film, and I think it's frustrating for anybody to hear me say this. I've said it a couple of times. I actually think it's frustrating for me to think it because I'm not quite sure what I mean by it.
Yeah.
But when I've said this when I talk about movies like Spotlight, where it's a movie, but it doesn't feel like it's a movie in the sense that it has no hook.
Yeah.
I don't understand it with the pacing. It's not something like Spotlight. It's sort of like a document of
barely movie
of this thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's telling a story. There's no doubt about it. But I don't know. There's just something about it, and the only way I can describe it is it's like I'm watching things happen. But obviously, you can use that for literally any movie in existence. So I still haven't entirely worked that out.
The Bourne films.
Fuck no.
Hang on, I have to hit the pause button for a second. All right, we're back. Sorry, I had to take a phone call in the middle of that. What were we talking about?
It's all good.
Let's talk about music. No,
basically, my point was The Disaster Artist was just a thing.
Yeah, I agree.
I enjoyed it, but it's just okay. It was there. So anyway, Solo trailer. I did a reaction video on YouTube.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I haven't really wavered in my thought process, my opinions of it. What did you think?
Again, I've had the same reaction to Avengers. I had the same reaction to something else. We're so close to the movie coming out that it's hard for me to even get more excited about it, or get worried about it. I thought the trailer was good. I thought it was cool. It still looks like a really fun ride. While people were having these like really intense debates about it on our Facebook group, I just dropped in and said, looks fun. That's all I need it to be. And just left. Like, I don't need it to achieve anything other than that. That's pretty much the only thing I go into Star Wars for. If I get a little bit of story that like blows my mind, that's just a cherry on top.
I'm not worried, but it's a weird feeling not being excited for a Star Wars movie. Like, I like how it looked. I liked what I saw. I think we're gonna walk away from this movie. We're gonna be talking about how much we loved Lando, how much we loved Chewie, maybe even how much we thought Alden did a fine job. But I'm not feeling it. And And I don't even think it's that there are other things in its way. Like, I'm not excited about Han Solo because all of my energy is in Infinity War. You know what I mean? Because I'm kind of excited for all of it. There's still Deadpool 2. There's a ton of stuff I'm looking forward to all summer. But it's a weird feeling for me to not be. And this was a great point on Jedi Council. And this is something that I've been thinking about too. But because of the amount of volume of Star Wars content that we're going to get, the reality is, and this has already happened to some fans, I don't share the sentiment. There's going to be a time where we get Star Wars and it's just okay that it is what it is and not the biggest thing in the box office.
Yeah, I mean,
it's inevitable.
I mean, I think we have to put it into perspective too. Telling a standalone truncated story that isn't super integral to like this longer saga, if you will, of films, it's going to be harder to get excited about it because there's not a lot of speculation you can do. We know where this guy's life goes post this, right? So you don't get to have some of the fun that you typically would with another film. So I think naturally people are going to be a little bit less vibey with it.
I think the most, when it comes to like characters and the questions that the trailer raised, it raised the most questions about Chewie.
Yeah, it's nice to get some backstory on a character we spent a lot of time with. If this was like a Knights of Ren standalone movie, having no context of what they even are, we'd be probably freaking the fuck out. Like, what is this? What does this mean? But it's not what it is. It is, for better or for worse, a story that nobody was really asking for, but we're going to get, and all they can really do is entertain us. Like, I know this is the conversation that's going to go around it. It's going to be a debate between if the movie is like objectively good, the debate is going to be, I thought it was a good movie, had a lot of fun with it, might not have been specifically what I was looking for in a Star Wars movie, but I did have a good time. And then the other side, people just absolutely being like, no, this is still not what I'm looking for. I don't know what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I think I said it the last time we talked about it, but it's like,
I think it's hard for this movie to be terrible. Like, I think it really is difficult for this movie to be really bad.
Yeah.
Like the narrative would have to be bad.
The last time we talked about, and I don't think that's the case at all. Yeah. I think that was sort of the movie that Lawrence Kasdan's been writing his entire life in his head. But I think that it's gonna be Alden. That I'm already anticipating. Everyone is gonna hate this movie because of Alden. For the most part. I mean, that's the reality. And I'm already annoyed by that because I don't need Alden to be Harrison Ford. My issue is that watching the trailers, I can't tell if he's good. I want Alden to be good in the movie. And there was like one line in the trailer that was like, that actually sounds like Harrison Ford. Even though I don't need it to be, I was like, that actually sounds just like Ford. But in the first teaser, all of his lines, there's like 3, and they all feel like bad delivery. And there's still a little bit of that for me in this trailer.
I have nothing to take away from that.
I just can't tell.
Right.
And that's all. I just want him to be good. That's all I want. I just want him to be good. It doesn't have to be anything else to me.
Right.
But I know that that's going to be everybody's ammo.
Yeah, I'm excited for this movie just to see it. I'm excited for it to just be over and done with, like so that we can move on and stop like not the wishy-washy takes about is it going to be good, is it going to be bad, but we're in this weird like gray area, gray space of we just don't know, do we? We just don't know at this point. We don't have enough to go by. And I think you kind of vocalize it really well. You're just like, it seems this way, but I don't know because so.
It looks good. I want to see it. I'm just not excited to see it.
Yeah, I feel you.
Another trailer.
More trailers? God. It's all this movie space is
I'm not talking about a movie. I'm talking about a television show. An HBO series. It's an obligation. We don't want to talk about it, but Westworld is coming back.
I want to watch it. I want to watch season 2.
Well, let's talk about the trailer. This trailer is not new, but we're talking about it as part of a Westworld preview.
Yeah.
I actually just watched the trailer for the first time because if you guys don't know, Jay and I are not fans of the first season of Westworld. We wanted to be so badly, and we were let down tremendously.
It made a lot of sense for us to be. I think this show took some time off, and it's odd to me that a show like this can take time off, and I actually feel the buzz about it. Like people are really excited for it, which that's cool. I get it. That's nice. But this show is still about lifeless robots with no consequences, with a show that made up its own rules towards the end, and I don't give a fuck about it. So watching the trailer, it's hard for me to get excited coming off. I don't even really remember what happened.
She kills Anthony Hopkins at the end.
Oh, cool.
What's his name? Jeffrey Wright is an android.
So it's hard for me to get excited for a trailer in that regard. Like, obviously, if they show me some narrative, some storyline that I can latch on to, it'll be a little bit more fun, I'm sure, to see what's going on. This was a show that I think was, I said it then and I'll say it now. I think this show was specifically a hit purely because people had a great time online theorizing about it. And they love to see their theories be proven right. I get it. I get why the show's big. I get why it's popular. It's just not doing it for me.
So watching the trailer, I'm reminded, and for one, Westworld just left my consciousness entirely. I know I'm in the minority. I know a lot of people, especially people that listen to us.
It's one of the only few hot takes we agree on with Andy Greenwald.
There are people that listen to Sight and Sound that disagree with us completely. But
shout out to Razika.
I thought this show just completely steamed out. I forgot about it. Right before we hit record, I did not at all realize it was actually upon us. I saw the Super Bowl trailer. I knew that, other trailer came out recently, but I did not realize we were days away. Again, sorry.
Relax.
From the premiere.
I'm the one that drank the beer.
And this show to me, it's just entirely steamed. What I will say is that the trailer looks bigger and more exciting.
It's always looked good.
It looks bigger, it looks more exciting, but I was reminded once again that there are absolutely zero characters to hang on to, because even the ones that aren't androids are so dull and lifeless. It is the most dull, dreary television environment I've ever seen, and the trailer annoyed me. Because it is the most muted thing ever. Hearing those characters and actors talk to each other, they
sound like robots.
Well, everybody does.
I mean, let me paint a picture. Androids. So they're selling us on characters via the trailer.
What are the fucking characters
that continuously were killed in the first season and just immediately brought back to life? Where are the stakes in that? And it's supposed to paint this picture of like the rights of robots
but I don't know that I always care.
No, you shouldn't.
I care if
Ryan accidentally turned my computer off earlier tonight. I didn't cry. I wasn't upset. I didn't.
And I certainly don't want to watch a TV show about your computer if it was upset that I did that.
You know what I get sad about? Looking at my dog's back. Ooh. Yeah, it's that thing's weird.
Something like iRobot, when that it sort of challenges our moralities, but in our ethics when it comes to like the human side of things. But when it's all about the androids,
for instance, let me just throw something out there. Like, not going to give away any spoilers.
Actually, I won't say if that's I don't like the way the show executes it. That's what I'll say. I'm not saying another show can't, and I can't be taken with it. But it's just the dreariness. It's not.
So I'm going to throw something out. I'm going to try to dance around some, avoiding some spoilers of the show. But in Mr. Robot, you're presented with an unreliable narrator where some things might be real and some things might not be real. The things that we find out that we were basically lied to by the narrator Sam Esmail is never getting us to invest in the people. He's never getting us to invest in the lie specifically. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like, if somebody is not present in a scene where we think they're present, he's not trying to sell us on our emotional investment into that person. Or if he ever was, he's making it distinct that this person that you're seeing is not the same person that this person thinks they are. Right? Like he knows it's smart to say this is nothing. So with Westworld, they're trying to sell us on an emotional investment of something that, again, like I've already said, they have infinite lives. Now, of course, at this point with the show, because I don't know, maybe their safety net's been removed with how they've overtaken this company. I guess it would be bummed to not see what's his name? What's that guy's name? Cyclops in the rest of the show.
James
Marsden. But I mean,
he didn't even have anything to do with season 1.
I know. You know what I mean, though.
Like they casted James. It's just pointless.
Yeah, not high on it, but I'll be watching, and
me too.
I'll be honest with you guys too. If I change my tune, I'll come on here and celebrate how Westworld did a huge turnaround. However, one thing I will say about the show, we're not so off base with our take on this, because the show itself, they went through so many debacles in the production of season 1. Like, they let go like a bunch of their writing team.
They halted production in the middle.
There was reports that they needed to do massive rewrites on the show because it wasn't sure of the direction that it was even going in. Like, we weren't just making up that issues with the show existed.
It was also getting expensive, if I remember that correctly.
Sure.
They had to,
for sure. So let's got some movie stuff out of the way. Quick movie stuff. Quick TV stuff. Let's wrap up with some quick music stuff here real quick. Breaking Benjamin just dropped an album. This is something that is higher on your radar than it is mine, but I was interested in checking it out specifically because not an abundance of like really high profile rock music coming out. I'll just give you my quick take on this band. I've never listened to a Breaking Benjamin album from front to back. This band, at least on this album, sounded exactly like the band Demon Hunter. Like, they were just virtually the same band, which I think is fascinating. They can write some really big songs. The vocals, it's just not for me. Like, I don't respond well to his vocal delivery. Some great melodies going on, some really epic choruses. But I also don't think the music is that heavy. Like, it's not. Like, it seems like they're trying to package it to me as being heavy and aggressive, especially because they use down-tuned guitars. But I was looking for a little bit more of a punch.
I wouldn't say that Breaking Benjamin is a heavy band. I think they have heavier tendencies on this album.
Heavier
for sure.
moments. Yeah.
There are specific screaming parts in this band, like lead parts that are supposed to be screaming, whereas I think they typically use screams as more of an auxiliary thing.
Right, like
they were more on the forefront
textural
here.
element.
They're still very small. I mean, it's still radio rock.
Right.
They're not screaming in the sense that, you know, some of our listeners know we talk
some
about
catchy songs,
Plot News stuff. They don't use screaming like that. That's not what I mean. They scream in the way that radio rock bands can't scream.
Chevelle screams.
Aerosmith.
Okay,
something like that. I mean, they just sometimes their voice does a thing.
Right.
Instead of having a screamer. Anyway, so my overall take with Breaking Benjamin, I think Breaking Benjamin, they are phenomenal songwriters.
Agreed.
I've been following them pretty much since their first album. And that was back in my middle school days. They were sort of the big deal. And them and Chevelle, actually, and like Crossfade. That was sort of what I was listening to. 3 Days Grace. That's what I was listening to at the time. And of course, Linkin Park. But Breaking Benjamin is a great example of one of those bands. And I don't have a problem with it necessarily. Breaking Benjamin is great at being Breaking Benjamin. And I've talked to you about this before. I love the idea. Not every band can pull this off. But there are bands that I like going to and knowing that they are just that sound. We talk about The Plot and You and Under Oath. We talk about how those bands have to evolve, I think. Breaking Benjamin, it hasn't really bothered me so much that they don't really evolve. They're just always kind of Breaking Benjamin. And it doesn't bother me necessarily because
gives you a certain amount of comfort just to be able to
it's that
return to the well.
But it's also like it's also just been enough for me to like go to their new album and still hear bangers that really catch my attention. It's like, well, that's great. Like
I could see myself revisiting this just because of how catchy it kind of was. I can appreciate it in that regard.
I think you've listened to more of it. My takeaway from this album is that this is the least interested I've ever been.
Okay.
In Breaking Benjamin.
Do you think that has anything to do with the fact that they're still doing similar things?
No, it's just the fact that I haven't heard a song that's impressed me.
Like a stand-up track.
Yeah. None of it is standing out. I think from what I know, I think Breaking Benjamin fans are gonna be fine with this. I can't imagine that they aren't. They've been fine with it this entire time. And maybe I need to spend more time with it. I haven't even listened to all of it, but so maybe I'll find my 2 or 3 songs that I really respond to, and I feel better about it. But like Red Cold River was the second song on the album. Right. I did a song reaction to that on the YouTube channel a while back, and I was I was mad on that song even back then, but nothing has stood out to me, and it just based purely off that. I just haven't responded to it in the way that I've responded to albums in the past. But man, they have written some incredible songs over the years.
Yeah.
They're great songwriters.
So just to wrap things up in the next 3 minutes, because the weekend is about to take the stage, let's just do a couple of quick rapid things. As I mentioned earlier on in the show, A Perfect Circle has a new album coming out. Comes out on this coming Friday, the 20th. And I did get to check out an early listen to it. And I'm not the biggest Perfect Circle fan. I like Tool. I dabble in some Tool. And I like some early Perfect Circle stuff. I like Judith and I like Three Libras. I think those songs are fantastic. Listen to some of the singles on this album and they didn't really appeal to me, so to speak. But when listening to this album, what I can tell you is that it's more of an experience type of thing, to where those songs that I heard out of context make a lot more sense when I'm sort of into this world.
Okay.
Definitely off the wall, definitely strange. The entire, obviously I'll have a review soon and I'm not going to get super into it, but the first song right off the bat is kind of a kick in the teeth, but not even for a way that like a heavy or aggressive album is going to be a kick in the teeth, where it's like a punch to your gut. It's just very like not at all what you would expect. It sounds like jazz sort of, they're playing in some sort of like piano bar sort of vibe. And at first I was sort of put off by it, but as the song sort of progressed on, it had this really nice groove and this nice soft melody. And it sounded like it could have been on like an R&B album or something. And I just was kind of into it. It's so weird. It's so bizarre. It's so kooky and off the wall that I was almost instantly just transported. Like, I'm kind of on board with whatever they're going to do next, because not on board, but I'm fine with experiencing whatever it is, because this is so strange to lead off an album with this song. It easily sounds like it could have been the last song on the album.
Okay.
So it's very strange. It's in our drive for you to check out and listen to. The other album that I want to preview
when does that come out?
Comes out this Friday.
This coming 20th. Friday? Okay.
The other album that I do want to talk about, I actually need to pull up the name of it real quick. It's coming out on Equal Vision Records. This is a band called Loom that I found out about because I was on YouTube one night, and God bless the YouTube algorithms, because this music video for their first single was recommended to me. And I was like, this looks interesting, so I'm going to check it out. From the second I listened to this band, I said, this is so for me. I'm so into this, and this is so fantastic that I need to listen to it as much as possible. They put out even more singles, and they got me so into them that I reached out to their PR group and essentially asked to get the album early. I got it early. It's called Wrung Out. It comes out on the 20th, the same day as this Perfect Circle album. You and I both have had a chance to listen to it. I listened to it from front to back, and I'll have my review soon for this as well. I'm not going to give too much away, but this band only has like 1,000 listeners right now on Spotify, and they need more. And it really blew my mind. I had no idea how you would take this. I thought it had elements of it that you would really like and enjoy, but this is a rock band with some heavy music. Like the music is heavy, like it's low tuned, but it's very slow. The music is very, very slow, very chill, very groove oriented. What was your take listening to this project?
It's one of those bands. I remember when I openly was discussing balance and composure, and Eric was like, Snelling, it makes absolutely no sense that you are a fan of that band.
Yeah.
I think he still says it to this day. Loom is the first time that I've said that about myself.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why I like this.
I kind of categorized it before you listened to it as being something that like you've told me before when we joked about mood albums, you've joked to me that like Circa Survive was your mood album, and that doesn't make sense to me specifically because what I define as a mood album is different for me than what it is for you. But just you saying that made me say in my mind, like, I feel like this is something in a certain context would really appeal on the Ryan Snelling music algorithm.
Yeah, and I don't get it, but I really, really enjoyed what I heard.
Yeah.
And
to me, it has shades of Thrice a little bit. It has shades of Balance, like you said. I'm glad you picked up on that because it is groovy. Like, it's got some nice, like, just rhythms and grooves. Also reminds me a little bit of Brand New sometimes.
Okay.
Like, their second single called Unending sounds like they exhumed Black Hole Sun from Soundgarden, like out of a grave and made it into this modern song, and it's incredible.
Yeah. They are part of the reason why I am so high on music right now. So this is definitely
because it shouldn't make sense, and it does.
That and just because I'm looking forward to it. Like, you're talking about A Perfect Circle, and I'm excited to hear the album. I have absolutely no regard, reverence, no history at all with A Perfect Circle. I couldn't tell you anything about them other than
Judith is a song for you.
I remember back in the day when I talked about listening to 3 Days Grace and Breaking Benjamin. I remember my friends listening to A Perfect Circle. I just never did. Not for any reason. Loom is the album that I'm excited for this coming weekend.
I've showed this to multiple people that I respect their opinion on.
Thank you.
They can't get enough of it. Carl really enjoys it. Brando really enjoys it. You enjoy it. I enjoy it. I will give my full review very soon. The last thing I do want to say about this...
just kind of puts me to sleep. I don't know what you want me to...
The last thing I want to say about this band... so if I talk about bands creating atmosphere today in the modern music landscape, it's easier today to create atmosphere because of all the technology we have at our disposal with using electronics and synthesizers and just very spacey sounding things, a lot of effects. This is a band, they're a three-piece. They're a guitar, a bass, and a drum, and vocals, obviously, but they create so much atmosphere by literally using the bare minimum that a rock band could use. It reminds me of how impressed I was with a band like Basement. Not a lot of bells and whistles to Basement. They just write some really good fucking songs.
Right.
This band is doing that, but they're creating an atmosphere with just these bare minimum things, and that is such a difficult thing to do. I mean, it's kind of like how I feel sometimes, and people are going to be like, this is it actually might be a terrible reference, but a movie like Cloverfield, the original Cloverfield, even though it's handheld camera, like they make that movie so effective in the way that's executed. It was impressive to me. So definitely check out Loom. Rung Out.
Lume, not Loom.
Yeah.
Lume.
And Rung with a W. WRUNG. This band, though, they need better merchandise. I want so bad to go out and purchase their like bundle pack of shirt, hoodie, vinyl. Not good,
doing it.
Not good on the merch department. Probably pick it up on vinyl, but
we'll email their PR again, be like, look, I can do this better than you can.
Yeah, pretty much. Watch it be like their guitar player that's designing their stuff for them. That's usually how it goes with like the shitty band merchandise.
Yeah.
Are you saying yeah because did you design Brave the Storm's merchandise? Are you satisfied with that? I don't think I've ever seen your merchandise.
No. I mean, I like the ideas at the time, but looking back, I don't
All right, Weekend's waiting. If find me at Jaye Williams, J the A the Y the E on Twitter and Instagram. It's the same for both. Ryan Snelling, where can they find you?
Find me on Twitter and Instagram at WhatUpSnell. There's links to things in the description. YouTube, podcast feed. It's all there for you. We love you.
Goodbye.